Hi SILEM stars, you're welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then you're welcome to my channel. My name is SILEM. In today's video, guys, I'm going to show you all how to make a drawstring jumpsuit. I already have a tutorial on how to make a drawstring dress. So if you haven't seen that video, please do check it out. I'm going to leave the link to that video in the pinned comments down below. So without further ado, let's get right into the video on how to make a lovely drawstring jumpsuit.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
I'm using 3 yards of fabric for this jumpsuit, but for the trouser part, I'm going to use just 2 yards. So I simply folded my fabric into 4. So this is 2 yards of fabric folded into 4. Now I'm going to be cutting the front pieces and the back pieces of the trouser together. Now the first thing I did was I marked my baseline, and then from that baseline downwards, I marked 1 inch. It's very important you mark this 1 inch because you're going to use it for the drawstring casing. Now the width of the fabric when folded is the thigh circumference divided by 2 plus 4 inches. Okay, so that's the width you should have for your fabric. Now from the top there, I'm just marking the hip line, which is 9 inches, and then from the hip line I'm marking the crotch depth. Now if I was making a normal fitted jumpsuit, the crotch depth would have been the hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches, but because this is a free jumpsuit, I added 3 inches instead of 2 inches to the normal hip divided by 4. Okay, now I also went ahead to mark the length that I want my trouser to be. Now from the fold there, I'm just going to mark my crotch extension. Make sure you're marking this from the part of the fabric where you have the double fold. Now the crotch extension I'm using is 4 inches. If this was a regular trouser or jumpsuit, I would have used 3 inches for the crotch extension. But because this is a very free trouser, I'm using 4 inches. Now from that crotch extension, I just divided the waist circumference by 4, and then I added 3 inches allowance. On the hip line, I'm dividing the hip circumference by 4. I'm marking that starting from the crotch extension, and then I'm adding my 1.5 inches allowance to that. Now I'm just going to connect the point on the waist to the point on the hip with a diagonal line. Now from the hip line to the crotch depth line, I'm just going to draw a curve. Okay, and this is going to be my crotch curve. Now for the hem width, you can decide how wide you want the hem to be. For me, I'm just taking out 1.5 inches from the sides. Okay, width of my hem is now going to be 16 inches. Okay, so you can decide for the width of your hem to be 10 inches or more. It depends on you. So I'm just creating a line from the crotch depth line all the way down to the hem, and I'm doing the same thing on the other side, creating a line from the hip all the way down to the hem. Okay, and after that I went ahead to cut along those lines. And once we cut that out, we're done with the trouser. We'll move on now to the top of our jumpsuit. I've gone ahead to fold my fabric for both the front and the back pieces, and then I marked the baseline, the bust point, and the waistline, and I also added 1 inch below that waistline, and that will also serve as my drawstring casing. So it's important you add that 1 inch after your waistline. Now for the width of my neck, I'm using 4.5 inches, and then I'm going ahead now to mark the shoulder divided by 2. Okay, make sure you're marking this from the fold, and then what you have left is going to serve as the length of your sleeve. The length of my sleeve I have here is 8 inches, but I'm going to extend the sleeve length later. Okay, now on the bust point line, I'm dividing the bust circumference by 4. I'm marking that, and I'm adding 2 inches allowance. Okay, on the waist, I'm dividing the waist circumference by 4, marking that, and then I'm adding 3 inches allowance. Now I place the waist of the trouser with that of the top just to be sure that they are actually equal. Now I'm going to use a curve to connect the bust point line with the waistline. Okay, after that, I'm just going to lift the front piece and then mark that same neck width on the back. Okay, Then for the neck depth of my back, I'm using 2 inches. All right. Then I'm going to draw a curve to connect the width with the depth. After that, I'll just mark the zipper allowance line on the back, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out the sides, okay, for both the front and the back. Now I'm going to take out any form of zipper bulging. To do that, I'll go in by half an inch on the waistline, and then I'm going to connect that to the neck depth. After that, I'm going to cut that out, and that will take out any form of zipper bulging. I'll also cut along the neckline for the back. Now for the front piece, you want to go in by 1.5 inches on the waist, okay, and then connect that with a straight line to the neck width. The reason why we're doing this is because we're going to add a band to this piece, okay, to give that kimono look. So we're just cutting along that line now. You don't need to have a shoulder slope for this, although you can actually put in the shoulder slope, it's fine, but I just did not see the point putting in that shoulder slope. So now I'm going to place my front piece right sides facing with my back pieces, okay. And then the next thing we'll do now is to join them along the shoulders. After joining them along the shoulders, this is what we had. Now I'm going to open this up like so, and now it's time for me to extend the sleeve, okay. The reason why I'm extending the sleeve is because I want the sleeve to be longer, and I also want to have that nice, fancy hemming on the sleeve. So I simply cut out a piece of fabric that was 5 inches wide. I just folded it and then I joined it to my sleeve. Now I'm going ahead to cut off the excess from the band. Now we're going to measure from the back neckline all the way down to the waistline of the front, okay. So just measure from the back neckline all the way to the waistline. When I finished measuring mine, I got 26 inches. Don't mind my short tape, it was actually 26 inches. Now I'm going to measure from the shoulder to determine how deep I want my neckline to be. So for me, I want the neckline to be 8 inches, so I'm just marking that. So do the same thing for both pieces. Just measure from the shoulder and mark how deep you want your neckline to be. If you want your neckline to be 7 inches deep, also mark that as well. Now measure from the neck all the way down to that point you marked, okay. So measure from the neck again, that's from the back neckline all the way down to the point you marked. When I measured, I got 15 inches. Now take note of those two numbers, 26 and 15. Now cut two pieces of fabric. The length should be 26, which is what you measured, plus 1.5, and then the width should be 5 inches. Now fuse both pieces of fabric with hairstay and place them right sides facing. Now from the bottom upwards, mark 1 inch. This 1 inch is going to serve as the space for your drawstring channel. So make sure it is 1 inch and nothing less, okay? Now from that 1 inch mark, go up by 0.75 inches and then just extend that line. Now from the top there, you're going to come down by the number you measured when you try to get the depth of your neckline. For me, I got 15 inches. So I'm just marking 15 inches from the top, and then I'm just extending that line. Now you're going to just measure the width of this fabric to get the midpoint. So measure the width of the fabric and get the midpoint, and just mark that midpoint all the way down to the bottom, and then use your ruler to just extend that line. Now you take this to your sewing machine, backstitch at this point, sew all the way down to this point, backstitch there, skip the 1 inch part there, and then backstitch there and sew all the way down to the bottom, okay. So make sure you skip that 1 inch part that you had marked. Now just watch what I'm doing. This is how you're going to, arrange the piece. All right. So just arrange it like this. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and join this now to our pieces. So I'm going to place my piece like so. Take the band and I'm going to place it right sides facing and then sew from the back neckline all the way down to the waist of the front. So once I'm done with that, this is what I have. I'll do the same thing now for the other side. Place the piece and then place the band right sides facing, okay? Like this. Arrange it properly. And then we'll sew from the bottom all the way to the top. So this is what you're going to have once you're done. Obviously weave or overlock the edges or the allowance that is created and also join them by the sides with 1-inch seam allowance. So once I'm done, that's what I have. Now back to our trouser. Want to mark the point where our pocket is going to be. So from that 1-inch mark downwards, I'm going to mark 2 inches. That's where my pocket is going to start from. Now I'm just going to create a notch at that point. I'm doing this for all 4 pieces. Now I'm going to separate my pieces. I have 2 pieces on one side, as you can see, and 2 pieces on the other side. Now I'm going to sew along the crotch curve. Now since they are exactly the same, you can use any one as the front and any one as the back. Just go ahead and sew along the crotch curve for both of them. Now this is my pockets. You can use the same fabric for your pockets. Now my pocket is 11 inches long and the depth on one side is 7 inches. The depth on the other side is 8 inches. Now I'm going to place my pocket where I have that 2-inch mark. Now make sure you cut 4 pockets, okay? So just place it where you have that 2-inch mark and then sew your pockets to the trouser for the front and for the back. So now I've placed my front piece on the table and I've placed the back piece right sides facing with the front. Now I'm going to sew from the waist around the pocket and all the way down to the hem. For the other side, I'll sew from the waist all the way around the pocket and down to the hem. So just do this with 1-inch seam allowance. Now from the crotch there, I'm just going to sew all the way down to the hem for both legs. Make sure that the crotch seams align when you're doing this. So this is what our trouser looks like, as you can see. Now I'm going to open up that center crotch seam there because I'm going to be putting in my zipper. Now it's time for us to join the top to the trouser, okay, to make it a jumpsuit. Now I'm going to make sure that the center front of the top aligns with the center front of the trouser. So just pin that. Also make sure that the side seams align. So just pin them. Pin the center front together. Pin the side seams together. Make sure that the side seams align. And also pin them all the way to where you have your zipper allowance. So pin them all the way. Now I'm going to join the top to the trouser with 1-inch seam allowance, okay, not less than 1 inch. 1-inch seam allowance, very, very important. Now I'm going to move on to that allowance I have there. This allowance is very, very important because it's going to serve as your drawstring casing. Now this here is the trouser on the left and the top is on the right. Now the allowance you created on the top, you're going to trim out the top allowance. Then the allowance from the trouser, you're going to push it upwards towards the top, fold it in a bit and then sew it down. Remember that the allowance is 1 inch wide, but by the time you fold it in, you're going to have about 0.75 inches casing, okay? So this is going to serve as your drawstring casing or drawstring channel. So make sure you're trimming the allowance on the top and not from the trouser, okay? So now just take your fabric and create a rope. For me, I'm just using bias to illustrate. Now you're going to pass it through the hole created on that band, okay? Pass it from there. Just use your safety pin, pass it through that channel all the way till you get to that zipper allowance, okay? Now all you have to do is just tack the rope at that zipper allowance so that it is secure. just stack it at that zipper allowance and your rope is inserted beautifully. Do the same thing for the other side as well. And this is the finished look of my trouser. I went ahead to use the fabric to create the rope that I used, or the drawstring that I used for this. So this is what it looks like. It is so lovely. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a thumbs up. Bye.